Brancher sat alone, with a hungry baby after his wife passed, until she knocked with full breasts. The wind moved slowly across the wide fields, bending the tall grass in soft waves that looked like the land itself was breathing. Burish. The ranch sat alone under a pale evening sky, far from town, far from noise, far from the life it once held. Inside the small wooden house, a man sat in a rocking chair near the window, holding a tiny bundle close to his chest. His name was Daniel Harper, and just a few weeks ago he had been a husband, a dreamer, and a man who believed his future was full of warm mornings and shared laughter. Now he was a widower and a father who did not know how to calm the tiny life crying in his arms. The baby girl, Emma, had red cheeks and a soft cry that grew louder when hunger took over. Daniel gently rocked back and forth, his boots tapping lightly against the wooden floor. He whispered words he did not know if she understood, but he hoped she could feel the love behind them. "It's okay, little one," he said quietly. "I'm here. I won't go anywhere." The house felt too big for just the two of them. Every corner held a memory of his wife, Sarah. Psst. Her laughter once filled the kitchen as she baked bread in the mornings. Her boots used to rest by the door, dusty from walking the fields with him. Now, only Daniel's boots stood there, worn and tired, like the man who wore them. Sarah had been strong, kind, and full of life. Her passing had been sudden and cruel, leaving Daniel feeling like the world had dropped out from under his feet. He barely had time to grieve before Emma arrived, small and helpless, needing him in ways he had never imagined. Yes. Daniel had grown up working with animals and land, not caring for babies. He knew how to fix a fence, how to calm a nervous horse, how to read the sky before a storm, but this tiny human in his arms was a new kind of challenge, one that made his heart race with fear and love at the same time. The sun slowly disappeared behind the hills, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Bruck. Daniel stood up and walked toward the small kitchen, still holding Emma. He looked at the supplies on the counter, bottles, milk powder, and instructions he barely understood. Bad. He had tried his best, but Emma often cried, and he worried he was not doing things right. He thought about Sarah and how gentle she had been, how easily she had held Emma when she was born. Daniel closed his eyes for a moment, wishing he could turn back time, even just for one more day. One more smile, one more moment as a family of three. Emma's cry grew louder, pulling him back to the present. He checked the bottle again, warming it carefully, like he had been taught by the nurse in town. He tested it on his wrist, just like the instructions said, and then gently placed it near Emma's lips. She drank, but slowly, and her tiny hands moved in the air as if searching for something familiar. Daniel watched her closely, his heart aching with a mix of relief and sadness. He wanted to give her everything she needed, even if he did not yet know how. Later that evening, as the stars began to appear in the dark sky, Daniel sat near the fireplace. The fire cracked softly, sending warm light across the room. Emma had finally fallen asleep, her small chest rising and falling in a peaceful rhythm. Daniel looked around the room again. The walls were simple, the furniture old but strong, just like the ranch itself. This place had been in his family for generations. It had seen hard times and good times, droughts and harvests, births and farewells. Now it was watching another chapter unfold. He stood up and gently laid Emma in the small crib near the bed. He leaned over and brushed his finger lightly against her tiny hand. Bend. She held onto it for a moment even in her sleep, and Daniel felt his throat tighten. "I'll learn," he whispered. "Psh, I promise." A soft knock on the door broke the silence. Daniel froze. No one ever came out here this late. The nearest neighbor was miles away, and the town was a long ride by horse or truck. His heart began to beat faster as he walked slowly toward the door. Another knock followed, gentle but steady. Hello!" a woman's voice called from outside. "I don't mean to bother you." Daniel opened the door carefully. Standing on the porch was a woman about his age, wrapped in a simple coat, her face kind but tired. She held a small basket in her hands and shifted her weight as if unsure whether she should be there. "I'm Clara," she said. "I live near the river road." Despair. "I heard about what happened to your wife. I'm so sorry. I ask you to discover the text of your daughter." Daniel nodded, not trusting his voice just yet. "I also heard you have a newborn," Clara continued. "I have a baby too. Just a few months old. I thought you might need some help. I brought some food and extra supplies." Daniel looked at the basket, then at her. He had not realized how lonely he had been until this moment, standing face to face with someone who cared enough to come all this way. "That's kind of you," he finally said. "You didn't have to." Clara gave a small smile. "Sometimes people need help, even if they don't ask for it." Daniel stepped aside and let her in. The warm light from the fire filled the room, and Clara looked around quietly, taking in the simple space and the signs of a man trying his best. She noticed the crib near the bed. Breath. "Is that her?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. Emma. Clara walked closer and peeked inside, her face softening. "She's beautiful." Emma stirred and made a small sound. Daniel tensed again, worried she would start crying. Clara turned to him. "If it's okay, I can show you a few things that helped me when my baby was new. Just simple things. No pressure." Daniel hesitated. He had always been a man who handled things on his own. But something about Clara's calm voice and gentle eyes made it easier to breathe. "I'd appreciate that," he said. Clara set her basket down on the table and began pulling out warm bread, soup in a jar, and clean cloths. The smell of food filled the air, reminding Daniel that he had barely eaten all day. As they talked, Clara shared small stories about her own struggles as a new mother, about sleepless nights and worries that never seemed to end. Daniel found himself opening up too, speaking about Sarah, about the ranch, about how quiet everything felt now. The night grew deeper, but the house no longer felt as empty. Emma began to cry again, and Daniel moved toward the crib. "Bask." Clara stood nearby, offering calm advice, helping him find a better way to hold her, to comfort her, to make her feel safe. For the first time since Sarah's passing, Daniel did not feel completely alone. Outside, the wind still moved across the fields, and the stars still watched from above. But inside the ranch house, a small light of hope began to glow, a reminder that even in the hardest moments, kindness could knock on your door and change the way forward. Morning came slowly to the ranch, carried in by soft light that slipped through the thin curtains and painted gentle lines across the wooden floor. The night had been quieter than most. Emma had slept longer, and Daniel felt a small sense of victory as he stretched his tired arms and looked down at her peaceful face. The house no longer felt completely silent. Clara had stayed late the night before, helping him learn small things, how to hold Emma in a way that made her feel secure, how to listen for the different sounds in her cries, how to tell when she needed food or comfort. Before leaving, she had promised to return in the morning if he did not mind. Daniel had nodded, unsure of how to feel about letting someone step into his fragile world, but also grateful beyond words. A gentle knock came at the door just as the sun climbed higher in the sky. Bay. Daniel opened it to find Clara standing there again, her coat pulled tight against the cool morning air. She held another basket, this one lighter than the one before. "Good morning," she said with a soft smile. "I hope I'm not too early." "Not at all," Daniel replied. We're both awake. Clara stepped inside, and the warmth of the house wrapped around her. Emma made a small sound from the crib, and Clara walked over to peek in, her face lighting up again. "She's getting stronger," Clara said. "You're doing a good job." Daniel rubbed the back of his neck. "I'm trying. Still feels like I'm guessing most of the time." Clara laughed gently. "That doesn't really change. Even after months, you still guess. You just get better at guessing." They shared a small smile, and for a moment, the weight of Daniel's worries felt lighter. "Basket." Clara set the basket down and began helping with breakfast. The smell of warm tea and bread filled the kitchen. Daniel had forgotten how comforting it felt to share a meal with someone else, even in silence. As they ate, Clara looked out the window toward the wide fields and grazing horses. "It's beautiful here," she said. Quiet, but in a good way. Daniel nodded. Sarah loved it. She said the land helped her think. He paused, unsure if he should continue, but Clara waited, giving him space. "She used to walk out there in the evenings," he said softly. Said the wind carried her worries away. Clara placed her cup down carefully. "She sounds like someone special." "She was," Daniel said, his voice steady but full of feeling. "Everything feels different without her." Clara did not try to fix his sadness. She simply listened. Later, Daniel showed Clara around the ranch. They walked slowly so he could keep Emma close in a small blanket wrap he had learned to tie the night before. The horses watched them from a distance, curious about the tiny new life in Daniel's arms. Clara pointed out small details, flowers growing near the fence, birds building a nest in the old tree near the barn. Daniel realized he had stopped noticing these things over the past weeks. Grief had narrowed his world to just survival. Now, slowly, it was opening again. Emma began to fuss, her little face scrunching up as she cried. Daniel froze for a moment, but this time he did not panic. He gently rocked her and spoke softly, remembering Clara's advice from the night before. Clara stood nearby, nodding in quiet support. "You're learning," she said. "She can feel that." They went back inside, and Daniel prepared another bottle with more confidence than before. Emma calmed, and Daniel let out a long breath he did not realize he had been holding. As the day went on, Clara helped with small chores, washing cloths, organizing supplies, even sweeping the floor. Daniel tried to protest, but she waved him off. "I know what it's like to feel like everything is too much," she said. "Let me help. One day you'll do the same for someone else." They talked more, not just about babies and the ranch, but about their pasts. Clara shared that she had lost her own partner during a difficult time in her life, which had forced her to become stronger than she ever thought possible. Her words were simple, but they carried deep understanding. Daniel found comfort in knowing he was not the only one who had been changed by loss. In the afternoon, dark clouds began to gather in the sky. The wind picked up and the air felt heavy, like the land was holding its breath. "Looks like a storm is coming," Clara said. Daniel nodded. They come fast out here. They made sure everything was secure, the animals in safe spaces, the windows closed, the fire ready. When the rain finally fell, it came hard, tapping loudly against the roof and windows. Inside, the house felt small but safe. Emma slept peacefully, unaware of the storm outside. Daniel and Clara sat near the fire, the light flickering across their faces, the sound of rain mixed with the crackle of burning wood. "Do you ever feel guilty for smiling again?" Daniel asked quietly. Clara looked at him, surprised but understanding. "Yes. For a long time I did." Breath. "I felt like being happy meant I was forgetting, but I learned something." "What's that?" Daniel asked. "Carrying someone in your heart doesn't mean you have to carry pain forever," she said. Breaths. "You can remember them and still let yourself live." Daniel thought about Sarah, about her laughter, her love for the land, her gentle way of holding Emma. He imagined her wanting him to keep going, to find moments of light even in the darkest days. Rasp. As the storm passed, the air outside felt fresh and clean. The sky cleared, and a soft rainbow appeared in the distance. Clara smiled when she saw it. "Looks like a promise," she said. Daniel held Emma closer and looked out the window. For the first time in weeks, he allowed himself to believe that tomorrow might not be as heavy as yesterday. As evening approached, Clara prepared to leave. She wrapped her coat around herself and picked up her empty basket. "I'll come back tomorrow if that's okay," she said. "Even just to check in." "I'd like that," Daniel replied, surprising himself with how sure he felt. Clara paused at the door. "You're stronger than you think, Daniel." "Emma is lucky to have you." After she left, Daniel stood for a moment in the quiet house. It was still simple, still filled with memories, but now it also held something new. Hope. Bent in his arms, and he smiled down at her. "Looks like we're not alone anymore, little one," he whispered. Outside, the fields glowed under the setting sun, and the ranch, once a place of only echoes and sorrow, now felt like a place where new stories could begin. The days began to follow a gentle rhythm. Morning light, warm tea, Emma's soft cries, and Clara's familiar knock at the door. What once felt strange now felt natural. Daniel no longer jumped at every sound Emma made. He was learning her moods, her tiny habits, the way she wrinkled her nose before she cried, and the way her fingers curled when she felt safe. Clara came by most days, sometimes for a few hours, sometimes just long enough to bring food or check on them. Breaths. She never made Daniel feel like he was being watched or judged. Instead, she acted like a friend who simply wanted to walk beside him through a hard season. One morning, Daniel decided to take Emma outside for the first time since the early days after her birth. The sky was clear and the air felt soft and warm. He wrapped Emma in a light blanket and stepped onto the porch. The wide land stretched in front of them, golden and peaceful. Clara arrived just as he was standing there, looking out at the fields. "Looks like you're showing her the world," she said with a smile. Daniel nodded. "Figured it's time she knows where she comes from." They walked slowly along the fence line. "Ah!" Clara pointed out the horses again, and Daniel talked about each one, sharing their names and small stories about their personalities. Emma slept through most of it, but Daniel spoke anyway, as if she could understand every word. As they walked, Daniel felt something shift inside him. For the first time, he did not feel like he was just surviving. Breath. He felt like he was living again, even if only in small steps. Later that day, Daniel tried something new. He decided to cook a full meal instead of relying on the simple food Clara often brought. the kitchen filled with the smell of soup and fresh bread. It was not perfect, but it was warm and real. Clara watched from the table, holding Emma gently in her arms.
"You're getting braver," she said.
Phew, Daniel laughed softly. I think I am. They ate together, talking about simple things. The weather, the animals. A story Clara told about her childhood near the river. Daniel found himself smiling without thinking about it, but not every moment was easy. That night, after Clara had gone home, Emma cried for hours. Daniel tried everything he had learned. He rocked her, fed her, walked back and forth across the room. His arms ached, and his eyes burned with tiredness. At one point he sank into the chair and pressed his forehead against Emma's small head. I don't know what you need, he whispered. I wish your mother were here. She would know. The words hurt as soon as they left his mouth. Base. He felt the old pain rise up heavy and sharp. Emma's cries slowly softened. Breathe. Her breathing evened out, and she finally fell asleep in his arms. Daniel stayed there long after, holding her and staring into the fire. He thought about how much had changed in such a short time. How love and loss could exist side by side. How something so small could carry so much meaning. The next day, Daniel looked tired when Clara arrived. She noticed right away. Rough night? She asked gently. Daniel nodded. I felt like I was back at the beginning. Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. You're allowed to have hard days. That doesn't mean you're failing. Her words stayed with him. That afternoon, Clara suggested they visit the small town nearby. Daniel hesitated. He had avoided town since Sarah's passing. Too many memories, too many faces that carried sympathy in their eyes. But Clara encouraged him. Sometimes stepping outside your world helps you breathe again. So they went. Daniel loaded Emma into the truck, his hands steady but his heart uneasy. The road was long and quiet, the land stretching out in every direction. Clara talked softly, keeping the mood light. When they reached town, people noticed Daniel and Emma right away. A few neighbors came over, offering kind words and gentle smiles. Daniel felt awkward at first, but he also felt something else. Support. They stopped by a small shop to pick up supplies. The woman behind the counter leaned over to peek at Emma and smiled. Best. She's beautiful, she said. Looks just like her mother. Daniel felt a tightness in his chest, but this time it did not break him. It reminded him. On the drive back, the sun hung low in the sky. Clara watched the road ahead, then spoke softly. You talk about Sarah with a lot of love, she said. But that's a good thing. It means she's still part of your life. Daniel nodded. I don't ever want to forget her.
You don't have to, Clara replied, but you also don't have to stop living because of her. That evening, Daniel sat on the porch with Emma in his arms.
The sky slowly darkened, and the first stars appeared. Clara sat nearby, wrapped in her coat. They did not talk much. They did not need to. The quiet felt comfortable now, not empty. Daniel looked down at Emma, then over at Clara. I don't know what I would have done without you, he said. Clara smiled gently. You would have found a way. You're stronger than you think. I just walked beside you for a bit. Daniel thought about that. Maybe she was right. Maybe the strength had been there all along, waiting for him to believe in it. As the night grew cooler, Clara stood up to leave. See you tomorrow? She asked. Daniel nodded. Yeah, tomorrow. After she left, Daniel carried Emma inside and laid her in the crib. He stood there for a moment, watching her sleep. He walked over to a small shelf where a photo of Sarah rested. He picked it up and held it close. I'm trying, he said softly. For her. For you. The house was quiet, but it no longer felt lonely. It felt like a place where love had been, still was, and always would be. Daniel lay down that night with a tired body and a calmer heart. He did not know what the future held. He did not have a plan or answers to every question. But he knew this. He was not walking this path alone anymore. And for the first time in a long while, that thought helped him sleep with a small, hopeful smile on his face. The season began to change, and Daniel could feel it in the air. The mornings grew cooler, and the sky seemed wider and clearer than before. Pang. Leaves near the river road started to turn soft shades of gold and orange. Emma was growing too. Her cries were softer now, and sometimes they were replaced by small sounds that almost felt like laughter. Daniel noticed every little change. The way she followed his face with her eyes, the way her tiny hand wrapped around his finger. These moments filled spaces in his heart he did not know were empty. Clara continued to visit, but now it felt less like help and more like friendship. Some days they worked side by side on the ranch. Daniel showed her how to feed the animals and repair a loose fence. Clara showed him better ways to fold Emma's blankets and how to soothe her when she grew restless. They talked about simple dreams. Bay. Clara spoke about wanting to plant a small garden near her home by the river. Daniel talked about fixing up the old barn that had been standing since his grandfather's time. One afternoon, Daniel decided it was time to clean out the barn. He had avoided it because it held too many memories. Barris. Sarah had loved that place. She used to paint small pictures of the horses and hang them on the wooden walls. Clara noticed his hesitation when he stood at the barn door holding Emma. We don't have to do this today, she said gently. Daniel took a deep breath. Bear. No. I think I do. They stepped inside together. Dust floated in the light that came through the cracks in the wood. Old tools, boxes, and faded blankets lay stacked in corners. Daniel walked slowly, his eyes moving over everything. In one box, he found Sarah's old scarf. He picked it up, running his fingers over the soft fabric. Memories rushed back, her laughter, the way she tied the scarf around her neck on cold mornings. Clara stayed quiet, giving him space. Daniel held the scarf for a long moment, then folded it carefully and placed it back in the box. This time, the memory did not crush him. It warmed him. They spent hours cleaning, sorting, and opening the barn to fresh air and light. By the end of the day, the space looked new again. Not empty of the past, but ready for the future. That evening, Daniel cooked dinner, and Clara stayed. Base. They ate at the small table near the window, watching the sky turn dark.
You've changed, Clara said softly.
Bet. Daniel looked at her.
I feel like I have.
You're lighter, she said, perhaps. Not because you've forgotten, but because you've learned how to carry things differently. Daniel thought about her words. He realized they were true. Later that night, Emma became restless again. Daniel walked across the room, holding her close, humming a tune Sarah used to sing. Clara watched quietly from the chair. Emma slowly calmed, her breathing steadying against Daniel's chest. Clara smiled. She knows that song. Daniel felt a small ache in his chest, but it was gentle, not sharp. As weeks passed, small moments began to connect into something deeper. Daniel found himself looking forward to Clara's visits in a way that surprised him. He enjoyed her stories, her quiet laughter, the way she listened. One afternoon, a strong windstorm rolled in without warning. The sky darkened quickly, and the air felt heavy. Daniel rushed to secure the animals while Clara stayed inside with Emma. A loud sound came from the barn as part of the old roof shifted. Daniel ran back, his heart pounding. Clara stood in the doorway holding Emma, her face full of worry. Okay, she called out. Daniel nodded, breathing hard. Yeah. Just the barn. I'll fix it. Together, they worked through the storm. Daniel climbed up to secure the loose boards while Clara handed him tools from below. Rain soaked them both, and the wind pushed against them, but they did not stop. When it was over, they stood in the yard, tired and wet, looking at their work. We make a good team, Clara said, laughing softly. Daniel smiled, but I think we do. That night, they sat by the fire again, drying their clothes and sharing warm soup. The storm outside faded into quiet. Daniel felt something shift inside him, something he had been afraid to feel. Not replacing the love he had lost, but opening a new space beside it. He looked at Clara, at the way she held Emma with such care, at the way she moved through the house like she belonged there. Clara, he said, unsure of his words. I don't know what this is, but I know I'm grateful you're here. Clara met his eyes. I'm grateful too. They did not rush. They did not name anything. They simply let the moment exist. The next morning, Daniel woke up before sunrise. He stepped outside alone for a moment. The sky was soft pink and blue, and the land was quiet. He thought about Sarah. He spoke to her in his heart, telling her about Emma's small smile, about the barn, about Clara. By him. I'm still here, he whispered, and I'm trying to live the way you would want me to. When he went back inside, Clara was already awake, sitting with Emma near the window. Bah! She was hungry, Clara said. I hope that's okay. Back. Daniel nodded, touched by the simple care in her actions. They spent that day working on Clara's garden near the river. Bang. Daniel brought tools and helped her mark out small rows in the soil. Emma rested nearby in a shaded spot, watching them with wide eyes. Becked. Clara planted seeds carefully, pressing the soil down with gentle hands. Someday these will grow into something beautiful, she said. Daniel looked at the small, simple rows and felt the meaning behind her words. As the sun lowered, they sat by the river listening to the water move over the rocks. Emma made soft sounds, and Daniel laughed quietly. Clara looked at him. You're smiling more these days. Daniel nodded. I think I finally remembered how. The day ended with the sky painted in deep colors. They walked back toward the ranch, the path lit by fading light. Daniel felt tired, but it was a good kind of tired. The kind that came from living, not just surviving. That night, as Emma slept peacefully, Daniel stood at the window and looked out at the land. He knew there would still be hard days, days when grief would return, without warning. Days when he would feel unsure and afraid. But he also knew this. He was building something new. Slowly, gently, with care, and in the quiet strength of shared work, soft laughter, and small, steady moments, Daniel found a new kind of hope growing, like seeds in the soil, waiting to rise toward the light. The ranch felt different now. The air carried a soft calm that Daniel had not noticed before. The land was the same, the wide fields, the steady wind, the quiet sky. But something inside him had changed. He no longer felt like he was standing still in a world that had moved on. He felt like he was moving forward, step by step, with Emma in his arms and hope in his heart. Emma had grown stronger. Her eyes were brighter, and her small sounds were turning into soft, happy noises that made Daniel laugh without thinking. He loved waking up to her gentle movements in the crib, her tiny hands reaching into the air as if she was greeting the day. Clara continued to be part of their daily life, but now it felt natural, not planned. Some days she came early to help with breakfast. Other days she arrived in the evening to sit by the fire and talk. She had become part of the rhythm of the ranch, like the sunrise and the sunset. One morning, Daniel decided to take Emma on a longer walk across the fields. The sky was clear, and the grass sparkled with dew. He wrapped Emma in her blanket and carried her close as he walked slowly, letting her see the world around her. Clara joined them halfway down the path, smiling when she saw them. "You two look like explorers," she said. Daniel smiled back. Breath. "Just showing her how big the world is." They walked together, talking about small things, what they would plant in the garden next, how the horses were getting stronger, how the river had risen after the last rain. Emma made a soft sound and Clara gently touched her hand. "Bet." "She's curious," Clara said. "Just like her father." "I think she gets that from her mother, too." They reached a small hill where they could see the whole ranch. Daniel stopped there, looking out at the land that had been in his family for so long. For the first time, he did not see it as a place of loss. He saw it as a place of life, of growth, of new beginnings. Later that day, Daniel found an old wooden bench in the barn. He cleaned it up and placed it under a large tree near the house. Breath. It became a place where they often sat in the evenings, watching the sky change colors as the sun went down. One evening as they sat there, Emma asleep in Daniel's arms, Clara spoke softly. "Do you ever think about the future?" she asked. Daniel thought for a moment. "I used to be afraid to. It felt wrong, like I was leaving the past behind." "And now?" Clara asked. "Now I think the past walks with me," he said, "but it doesn't have to hold me back." Clara nodded understanding. The days turned into weeks, and the garden by the river began to show small green shoots pushing up through the soil. Clara was excited, pointing them out like little victories. "Ha ha 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 ha! See," she said one afternoon, "something new is growing." Daniel looked at the small plants and felt a deep connection to those words. One evening the town held a small gathering. Daniel had avoided these for a long time, but this time he decided to go. He wanted Emma to be part of the community, to grow up knowing people, not just wide fields and quiet rooms. Clara went with them. People smiled and waved as they arrived. Some came over to greet Emma, offering kind words and gentle laughter. Bear. Daniel felt a warmth in his chest. He was not alone in this world. Burr. He had support, even when he did not realize it. As the sky darkened, small lights were lit around the gathering. Narration. Music played softly in the background. Clara and Daniel stood near the edge, watching Emma's eyes follow the lights. "She's seeing so much already," Clara said. Daniel nodded. "And she's teaching me to see it too." On the drive back, the road was quiet. Emma slept in her seat, and Clara looked out the window. "I'm glad you came tonight," she said. "So am I," Daniel replied. It felt good to be part of things again. That night after Clara left, Daniel stood in the doorway for a long moment, watching her walk down the path toward the river road. He felt something deep and steady in his chest, not rushed, not heavy, just real. The next morning, Daniel woke up early and made breakfast. He wanted to do something special, though he did not know exactly why. When Clara arrived, he invited her to sit at the table. The sun streamed through the window, and Emma rested nearby. "I've been thinking," Daniel said slowly, "about how things have changed, about how much you've helped us." Clara looked at him, her eyes gentle. Daniel continued, "But you did." "And because of that, this place feels like a home again." Clara took a deep breath. "This place feels like one to me, too." They sat in quiet for a moment, letting the words settle. Daniel reached out and placed his hand on the table, close to Clara's. He did not rush. He did not push. He simply let it be there. Clara looked at his hand, then placed hers next to it. Outside, the wind moved softly through the trees. From that day on, things did not suddenly become perfect. Life was still life. There were still hard mornings, long days, and moments of doubt. Emma still cried sometimes. The ranch still needed work. Past still visited Daniel's heart now and then. But now he did not face those moments alone. One afternoon, Daniel took Emma to visit Sarah's resting place on a small hill near the ranch. Clara stayed back, giving him space, but he knelt down and held Emma close. "This is your mother," he whispered. "Rest. She loved this land, and she would love you more than anything." Oh, the wind brushed against his face, gentle and warm. "I'm trying to live in a way that honors her," Daniel said softly. "And I think she would be glad to see how things are growing." When he returned, Clara was waiting under the tree. "You okay?" she asked. Daniel nodded. "Yeah, I think I am." As the seasons continued to change, Emma took her first small steps across the wooden floor. Daniel and Clara watched with wide smiles as she wobbled forward and fell into Daniel's arms. They laughed together, a sound that filled the house with light. The ranch, once quiet and heavy with sorrow, now echoed with small sounds of life. Emma's laughter, Clara's voice, Daniel's steady footsteps. One evening, as the sun set in deep shades of orange and red, they sat on the bench under the tree. Emma played in the grass nearby, her small hands touching leaves and stones. Daniel looked at Clara. "I don't know what the future looks like," he said. But I know I want to keep walking it with you and Emma. One day at a time. Clara smiled, her eyes soft. One day at a time sounds perfect. The sky darkened, and the first stars appeared, just like they had on that first night when Clara knocked on Daniel's door. Daniel thought about how far he had come since then. From a man sitting alone in a quiet house, afraid of every sound, to a father watching his child explore the world, surrounded by care and connection. Emma ran toward him, laughing, and he lifted her into his arms. The land stretched out around them, steady and strong, holding their story within its wide open space. And as the night settled in, Daniel felt something deep and certain inside him.
Life had not given him the future he once imagined, but it had given him something real, something growing, something full of light.